Happy Halloween, miserable humans! Originally, I was planning on having my Halloween video be a review of Erebus from the Ashes by Thomas Vaccaro, aka Unicorn of War, which I have told him about on Discord, which he is excited about. However, with the rebranding of the book, which will include a new cover and even a new name for the book, he said it would likely be best for me to hold off until spring. So that's what I'm gonna do. Though I'm still gonna be working on the script. So I had to do something else for Halloween, and I figured that since I did my rankings for the transformations of the Trix last Halloween season, I might as well do a video ranking their voices. I mean, Winx Club has been dubbed by 6 different companies, so there's a lot to compare there. Those companies being Cinelume, 4Kids, Dubbing Brothers, Nickelodeon, DeviantArt, and 3Beep. Although DeviantArt and 3Beep share mostly the same cast with a few exceptions. I've talked about the voices of Winx Club before in my recasting videos, but this will be me actually going through their official English voices and ranking them for each character from worst to best. I will get around to ranking the specialists and of course the Winx Club themselves after this. Also, yeah, I'm kinda stealing this idea from Unicorn of War and Kingdom Orange too, but I swear I always planned on doing these videos. But you should definitely check out both of their videos if you haven't already because they have really great content. Now, without any further delay, let's begin. Starting off with the leader of the Trix, Icy. While none of the Trix has a particularly strong collection of voices, hers tends to be the weakest since most of her voices run the gambit of overly feminine high school mean girl with a high-pitched voice instead of an ice-cold biatch that wants to rule the universe with an iron fist. The best voices for Icy tend to have a deeper tone and exemplify her ruthlessness, cunning, and sass. So why would they have her sound like a poor man's version of Regina George but with none of the charm? And no one exemplifies this worse than her Nick voice, Larissa Oleynik.
Christmas magic? What is that? It must be some new kind of power. Oh, isn't that precious? And I couldn't care less! We get Bloom alone, and we take her Christmas magic.
Seriously, who was the casting director who heard this voice and thought it was right for Icy? She sounds way too feminine and not intimidating in the slightest. I know Larissa for her work as the younger and bratty sister from 10 Things I Hate About You and as the voice of preteen Odette from The Swan Princess, so she's definitely a great actress, but she was horribly miscast in this role. Any moment in the newer seasons during the Nick dub era where Icy managed to be remotely threatening was just killed by Larissa's performance. Not to mention make Icy in season 5 even more unbelievably insufferable.
I will never leave Tritanus. Never, ever, 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 ever. Oh.
And that's coming from someone who is a major Icy stan, and I consider her my favorite character. But I just cringe every time I hear this voice come out of her. Not that much better is Erica Schroeder from the DeviantArt/3Beep dub, who also did the voices for Farragonda in this dub, as well as the voice of Daphne, Piff, Galatea, and Maya in the 4Kids dub. And she's amazing as all of those characters. However, she has the same problem as Larissa, only not to the same extent. She sounds overly feminine and not intimidating in the slightest.
What are you doing back there? Come closer. The Trix are the rulers of nature. This idiot will end up waking up all the creatures of the depths.
It's made worse in season 8 with the new art style that makes all the characters look younger, which makes Icy and the rest of the Trix just not come up as a legit threat. It's a shame because they actually were remotely threatening in season 7, with the only thing killing their credibility being their English voices. But yeah, way too feminine and kind of sounding like a high school mean girl that just graduated and is trying to relive her glory days, but clearly failing at it. Slightly better but still awful is Karen Strassman. Much like a majority of the cast in the Dubbing Brothers dub, she is very miscast and given horrible direction. While she's not as overly feminine as Larissa and Erica, it's still way too feminine and kind of melodramatic.
Mission accomplished, my lords. We have the power of the ancestrals, and now we'll shut down the positive energy and summon them here. You may have destroyed the hourglass, but not the pollen. That pollen is the source of life, so it can't die.
If I were basing this on just her appearance in the second movie, she would be below Erica. However, in the third movie, she at least has a deeper voice that made her more tolerable.
The humans humans are polluting all the oceans of the world, and that weakens the balance of the infinite ocean. Politia, explain yourself. How do we get our hands on this pearl? I have always been the strongest, so only I can be the Empress.
It's still not a good performance, but it's at least better than Larissa and Erica. Honestly, I've listened to some of her work, and maybe she could have been a decent Icy, but I feel like if she did a performance similar to certain seductive characters she's played, she would have been a better fit for Darcy. But moving on. Now we've finally gotten to a decent Icy voice. Eleanor Noble from the Cinelume dub. It's sad that we're at number 2, and it's the first decent Icy voice, and it's not a good one. But what can you do? She was also the voice of Mitzi and even Diaspro in the first season, which you can tell because of how her voices all sound the same. But for Icy, well, she still has a high school mean girl vibe to her. It's not in a way that feels like a cheap knockoff of Regina George.
Time's running out. You gotta decide, Bloom. Stella's life or the ring?
It's payback time, little Murda, and it's gonna hurt.
Normally I wouldn't, but I don't need her anymore.
It's kinda deeper and has an air of sophistication that helps her come off as more threatening than the other voices. I do think she works better as Mitzi, but that's beside the point. While it's nothing special, I can at least take her a little seriously, though I do have to ignore some of the lame and stiff dialogue from the Cinelume dub.
Try breaking free from that, Miss Goody Fairy.
However, it just doesn't feel like Icy. Now, you all probably expected number 1, especially if you watched my recast videos, Lisa Ortiz of the 4Kids dub. Literally, no one should be surprised because Lisa Ortiz just is Icy. In fact, she is to Icy what Robin Williams is to the genie from Aladdin and James Woods is to Hades from Hercules. Literally, no one can top her.
Try to freeze my heart. Don't they know my heart's already so cold nothing can freeze it? Idiots. Talk to me. And this better be good or I'm gonna turn you into something you didn't even think possible. Isn't that so cute? You got your fairy wings. Too bad your little outfit can't do your fighting for you. I'll tell you something, ladies. One way or another, I'm getting out of this place. And then when I do, that loser Bloom is mine. You're gonna wish you never survived the destruction of Spark.
She can be calm and calculative, she can be unbelievably savage, absolutely ruthless, and fly off the handle into a murderous rage. I don't know why more dubs don't let Icy have a deeper voice. They just suit her perfectly and keep her from coming off like a high school mean girl. This makes us take her more seriously. Lisa also voiced Musa, Mitzi, Digit, and even Musa's mother, Juanine. But you'd never be able to guess that Icy was voiced by the same actress who does their voices because she's just so good. I even know people who hate the 4Kids dub that agree that she's the best voice Icy has ever had. I mean, no one can compare to her. I, along with the entire fandom, am still angry that DeviantArt/3Beep had Lisa Ortiz in their cast and they didn't think to have her reprise her role as Icy. It's the ice coffin with them.
From the depths of primordial space, I summon a box with a frigid embrace.
Darcy fares a little bit better than Icy in her collection of voices, but that's not saying much. When it comes to Darcy's voices, her voices tend to sound so ordinary and kind of girly, which tends to make her not come off as a legit villainess or seductress, but rather just some generic high school mean girl. The worst of the bunch is Becca Ordonez-Zacharin, who was her second Dubbing Brothers voice and voiced her in the 3rd movie, and was also the voice of Stella in the 1st and 3rd movie. Not the only time that Darcy and Stella would be voiced by the same actress. However, just like how her Stella voice was terrible in the movies, so was Darcy, but much worse.
The throne of the infinite ocean remains without a ruler, and pollution upsets its balance. But are we sure it isn't dangerous? Yes, Stormy. Our sister just gave her trademark power-hungry evil witch grin.
It gives the vibe of if Maleficent was voiced by a bad Snow White impersonator. It's nasal, way too high-pitched, and overly stereotypically girly sounding. I mean, you heard her voice. Does it really need any explanation for how awful it is? It just feels like a one-note mean girl villain lackey rather than Darcy. It's even worse than any of Icy's overly girly voices. A million times better, but still awful, is her first Dubbing Brothers voice, Erin Fitzgerald. Her voice is overly feminine and girly, but also melodramatic as Tartarus, to the point it's kind of laughable.
The positive energy's so intense! We're gonna wipe you out once and for all. Now say goodbye for good
so.
this time. The negative and the positive. Ow! It burned me. Are you sure about this? It's a very powerful spell, and we—
Seriously, who was the voice director of this dub? They deserve to be blacklisted. It just doesn't suit Darcy and is one of the worst voices from the dub, along with Bloom, Oratel, and Mandragora's voices. Nothing else that can be said because I think the clips spoke for themselves. Much more tolerable, but still terrible is Lori Gardner from the DeviantArt/3beep dubs. Her issue is the same as Erica Schroeder as I see, though not nearly as bad.
we haven't introduced our animals to you yet.
Although we remained in prison for so long in the Dimension of Legends.
You'd better go back where you came from, Kalshara.
Overly girly and ordinary sounding to where she can't be taken seriously as a threat. She does have some of Darcy's chilled and mellow attitude, but that's it, and it's not enough to save this miscasting. Now we have her most boring sounding of all of her voices, Carrie Finley, who unsurprisingly is from the Cineloom dub. Out of all of her voices, this one makes her sound the most ordinary, which is saying something.
Trying to fool the Queen of Black Magic with the pathetic illusionary effect? Bad trick from a bad witch. I'll squish you like a cockroach. For us, all that matters is knowing that we can count on you. The rest will come all by itself.
While it's leagues better than the voices placed lower on this list, it's just really boring and doesn't really have much personality other than boring high school mean girl. That's one of the many problems with the Cineloom dub. The cast just being lifeless, lacking personality, being stiff and static, and just boring, with a few exceptions. Much like most of the cast, she sounds like an amateur fan dub performer on YouTube. No range, no personality, and nothing that makes her stand out. Now we have finally gotten to a decent voice, Jennifer Cody of the Nick dub. Again, it's sad that it took until the number 2 spot to finally get to a decent voice, but what can you do? Before this, I knew her for her performance as Charlotte LaBeouf from The Princess and the Frog, and boy, is that as opposite of a character as you can get. While Jennifer does still have a voice that sounds very high school mean girl, it's done in a way that she still feels kind of threatening and does have a bit of that seductive tone to her voice.
Now all I have to do is disappear, and she'll stay here. Well, I bet you didn't see that one coming. Sure thing, but I'll be taking this with me. If you want it, you can find me in the Legendarium world.
The voice is at least memorable, unlike Carrie and Lori, but it's still kind of lacking. Her inflections are kind of repetitive and sound kind of forced at times. Plus, I am bitter that they had Laura Bailey in their cast, aka the voice of Lust from Full Metal Alchemist, and they didn't think to cast her as the voice of Darcy? Shameful. But overall, Darcy's Nick voice isn't anything more amazing, but it's still serviceable and way better than her other voices, but that's not hard. And finally, to the surprise of no one, number 1 is Karen Manuel Tuckett from the 4Kids dub. This is by far and away her best and only good voice.
Congratulations!
Here's your prize. Sure, I have the perfect spell for that. When the spell is cast, show us the past. Well, hello there. He's not the source of the dragon fire, but there's an awesome dark energy coming from this boy. Can we take him home, I see? Well, there's no formal arrangement, sweetie. All you have to do is agree that you'll be mine. And then, just like that, you will belong to me.
Sometimes I forget how pretty I am. Hi.
Unlike the others, she doesn't sound so overly girly, ordinary, or lacking in personality. I love the deepness of her voice that has a slight raspiness to it to give it that sexy sound while also being full of personality. She's savage and iconic, as well as chilled and mellow. Not to mention her voice stands out from the other voices by being a voice that truly captures the essence of the character. The only actress that I can see surpassing her is Laura Bailey, but I've talked about that already in my recasting videos. Plus, I love how she has also voiced Stella, Murta, and Shatta, but sounds completely different from all of them. So yeah, her voice is truly that of an evil but mellow seductress that would entice anyone and lure them to their doom, but also be able to lose her temper like her sisters.
Think not of spreading evil or wreaking havoc. Just listen to your heart's true desires.
But my heart's true desire is to spread evil and wreak havoc.
Out of all of the Trix, Stormy probably has the best collection of voices, though that's not saying much. Just like her sisters, her voices tend to run the gambit of high school mean girl, but her best voices tend to show off her thunderous temper and have a raspiness to them. The worst of the bunch is definitely Anik Matern from season 3 of the Cineloom dub. While she doesn't sound like a high school mean girl, she sounds like a melodramatic woman in her 40s.
Yeah, I can't wait to destroy Bloom. Valtor will be so proud of us. What, Valtor afraid? Royal Highness, I'm so excited. Should we curtsy? I dreamt I was eating loads of Jell-O and being disgustingly nice to people. I was so ashamed of myself.
It really doesn't fit her being the most immature of the trio of witches that's the quickest to anger. Honestly, when I'm not cringing at the voice, I'm kind of laughing at it for how bad it is. She's definitely better than how she sounds as Musa, where she sounded like a 40-year-old woman with a cold, but it's still pretty awful. She doesn't really show much of Stormy's thunderous temper in her performance, and just comes off as a ridiculously over-the-top theater person stereotype. Definitely one of the worst members of the cast based off her performance as Stormy, and especially Musa. 1,000 times better, but still horrendous is Stormy's other Cineloom voice from the first 2 seasons, Sarah McCullough. Out of all of the Trix's Cineloom voices, she sounded the most overly feminine and like a high school mean girl. Tartarus, maybe even like a middle school mean girl.
Oh, but you do, Darcy. You like that guy, don't you?
Chill out, sister. I'll settle this for you in a minute.
Think you can overpower my control of the clouds with a ridiculous rain dance?
It's too light, feminine, ordinary, and soft-spoken, all of which are things that Stormy is not. She also voices Musa, and boy does it show, especially when they are in the same scene together.
Right. I was sure I saw one of those spear thingies come up here. You know, you've got a lot of guts coming up here alone. But thank you, because I was getting really, really bored.
Dear Neptune, this dub was so bad with the casting and direction. But anyway, nothing about her feels like Stormy. Tartarus, even Karen from Mean Girls is more intimidating than her, and that girl didn't have a mean bone in her body. Slightly better is Reba Burr from the Dubbing Brothers dub. While this is definitely better than the voices her sisters have in this dub, that's not saying much because she still has a Valley Girl sound to her.
Is that a challenge? Get a chance now that we're the ones with all the power. How dare you call us girls? Can a girl do this?
Her performance got slightly better in the third movie because of how her voice got a little deeper.
It's the perfect moment to become empresses. Sometimes I wonder why we even bother to get out of bed. I'm pretty sure I just told you not to tell me that.
I will give Reba credit for the fact that unlike Sarah and Anik, we do hear some semblance of Stormy's temper in her voice and a slight raspiness. However, she doesn't do it in a way that works for Stormy's established personality and still comes off like a feminine high school mean girl. Almost like she's a retired member of the Flower Scouts from Camp Camp. Not to mention that absolute meme of a scream in the third movie that is hilarious.
You need to branch out.
Oh my Poseidon, what the Tartarus was even up with that? Anyway, marginally better is Zoe Martin from the DeviantArt/3B dubs. Again, she sounds better than Icy and Darcy in this dub, but that's not hard, and it still isn't a good performance.
See what you can do against this. Double tornado! 3 fairies in one fell swoop. It's my lucky day. I'm sick and tired of playing with these ridiculous fairies.
Her voice still comes off like a high school mean girl, but she does display some of Stormy's impatience and has a slight raspiness to it. It's too feminine, but it's still at least the quote-unquote best of her bad voices. She kind of sounds like a lackluster imitation of Kimberly Brooks from the Nick dub. Speaking of which, we finally get to her good voices, starting with Kimberly Brooks of the Nick dub. It's sad that there are only 2 good voices and that Stormy is the only one that has more than one good voice out of all of the Trix, but those are the clans that we've been dealt. At first, I wasn't too keen of Stormy's Nick voice because of how in the TV specials she sounded too calm and calculative to be the impulsive and hot-headed Stormy.
They're made to find and store the most powerful and mystical energies. I'm not impressed, and you're wasting time. We thought you might like to know. We're under attack.
However, after those specials, her performance got much better with her displaying Stormy's immaturity, bad temper, and how she's prone to violence with a raspy voice.
Looks like the flower fairy didn't make it. What are you doing?
Come on, get a grip. Stop fighting. Whatever. Let's go.
The weather is mine to command without limit.
She does an amazing job showing off how Stormy is very unhinged and always ready to cause havoc and destruction. I especially love her performance when she's the Bride of Frankenstein because her vocal performance perfectly displays her love of violence and her more than willingness to commit murder with absolute pleasure.
And now, my dear fairies, get ready to say goodbye. What's this? I'm becoming even stronger, more powerful.
However, unsurprisingly, her #1 voice is her 4Kids voice, Susie Myers. I mean, is anyone actually surprised? Susie absolutely captures every single aspect you want from a character like Stormy with her thunderous temper, raspy voice, and being absolutely unhinged.
I got a flash for you, fairies. A lightning flash. Hey, there should have been a cloud of thunder there. What? The clouds are parting? We're gonna flush your parents down the vortex toilet unless we get your power. Stop the insanity! I miss days of mayhem and chaos and torment, dark skies and thunderstorms, laughing at someone else's expense!
I have heard some people say that her voice can be too cartoony at times, but I personally don't see it, especially compared to Annick's performance. But I can see why people probably prefer someone more subtle like Kimberly Brooks, who is undeniably Finn-credible as well. However, to me, Stormy isn't a character that is subtle in the slightest, and is always wanting to be big, loud, and cause mayhem. I was even tempted to keep her as Stormy in my recast videos, but Nicole Sullivan is just perfect for her in my opinion. Slightly better than Susie. However, Susie absolutely captures the spirit of the character better than any other actress that has ever had the role. She always seems like she's ready to just choke the Tartarus out of someone, and I love her for it. So if you guys can tell, the 4Kids dub is superior in my opinion. I know some will complain about me having 4Kids as #1 for all of them, but to them I say,
Electric booty kick!
sorry, not sorry. The 4Kids dub just really puts its all into its casting, and while there are a few that are a bit cartoony, that helps with the charm of the dub. One of the many things I'm grateful for is how they actually took the time to make sure that the voices for the Trix were right for the characters, and didn't just make them sound like high school mean girls. I mean, one of the major things about the Trix is that they are supposed to be more than just high school mean girls and actually be legit threats that you believe as power-hungry villains that made all of magics crumble beneath their very feet and almost took over the universe. And honestly, none of the other English voices for the Trix outside the 4Kids dub, apart from Kimberly Brooks from the Nick dub, actually portrayed that. Voice acting is one of the most important things when making a good product, and it's something where you need to be critical when casting for it in order to draw in audiences. I honestly don't think I would have been drawn in with the other dubs or taken them as legit threats if I had watched those as a little merboy instead of the 4Kids dub. I definitely wouldn't be as big a fan of Icy if I had to listen to her Nick voice. Ugh. Anyway, those were my rankings for the voices of the Trix in the different English dubs. What do you guys think? Do you agree with any of my rankings? What are your rankings? Let me know in the comments below. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. You can also follow me on my other social media accounts in the links below. I'm the Wicked Merman from Under the See Ya!